Well, welcome everyone to our year-end giving webinar. It's wonderful that you could join us, whether you're joining us live or listening to this recorded webinar. My name is Jim Murphy. I am Director of Stewardship Resources and Operations here at the Episcopal Church Foundation. I oversee all of ECF's work in the area of planned giving and donor solutions. And I'm so excited that you're able to join us for this webinar at this time. And just to remind everyone, please stay on mute and stop your video for the presentation as we are recording. That will help the recording and so that this can be used by many different leaders and donors in the months and years to come. So that's the first note, just to remind everyone, again, stay on mute, stay off the video. And if you have any questions, please feel free to type those into the Q&A. And at the end of the webinar, we will be addressing all of those questions, and any that we do not answer, or for the questions that were posed in registration, we'll be following up with you directly. We will also be sending both a recording and the slides for this presentation to everyone. Primarily, this is a webinar for leaders, and though, of course, many donors will benefit if you are a donor and not a leader at your local congregation or judicatory or diocese, that is just fine too. But welcome, it's wonderful to have you here today. And I am now very excited to turn the floor over to Angela Duffy. Angela, will you please take it away and introduce yourself?
Thank you, Jim. I appreciate it. Angela Duffy. I am presently serving as Executive Vice President for New Covenant Trust Company. I've been with the Foundation and New Covenant Trust Company for 17 years, and I will open us with prayer, and then we will kick it off and begin. So if you would please bow your head with me. Good and gracious God, we thank you for the gift of this day. We are so grateful for this time together. Help us to learn together. Help us to support each other as we seek to serve in ways that honor you. Please provide strength to those nourishing your flock. We ask that you help us support those seeking to be cheerful givers in the sharing of your abundance. For we know that all we have belongs to you and that we are mere stewards while here on earth. Remind us of your generosity so that we may be generous with others. We thank you for your ultimate act of generosity in the gift of your Son, the risen Lord. It's in the precious name of Jesus that we pray. Amen. Well, to get us started, Jim introduced himself, but I'll provide a little more background and introductions. Jim is the Director of Stewardship Resources and Operations with the Episcopal Church Foundation. He is also a certified fundraising executive and the author of several books, an editor of books. Most recently, he authored the book Faithful Giving, The Heart of Planned Gifts. We also have with us Greg Rousos. Greg is President and CEO of New Covenant Trust Company. He also serves as the Chief Officer of Strategic Alignment at the Presbyterian Foundation. Greg has served the Foundation and New Covenant Trust Company for over 20 years. Greg is a CPA and a certified financial planner. So thanks for being with us, Greg.
Of course.
So we are here today to learn more about year-end giving. We know that for most churches, year-end giving is critical for church budgets. We hope that the discussion today is helpful to you and maybe generates some new ideas for you. We want to have as much time as possible for your questions. And so as Jim mentioned, we will be utilizing the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. So with that, we'll get started. And Greg, I believe you're up first.
Great. Thank you, Angela. Hello, everybody. It's wonderful to be with you. As Angela mentioned, I've been with the Foundation and New Covenant Trust Company, Presbyterian Foundation, for over 20 years, 23 years, over 23 years to be exact. And I actually announced my retirement a while ago, and my last day is December 31st. And it's just been a wonderful journey through this ministry to help and support congregations and mid-councils and ecumenical relations that we have. And I'm excited, and it's a privilege to announce my successor. Our New Covenant Trust Company board and also the foundation also went through a process to search for my successor. Took 6 months or so, several hundred applicants, hundreds of interviews, and it turns out the ideal perfect candidate was already on board, and that is Angela Duffy. So I'm excited to announce that Angela will be stepping into my role January 1st. So congratulations, Angela. And I am so excited to see where the trust company goes and new levels that you take both the foundation and trust company into the future. So thank you.
Thank you, Greg. You've been a wonderful mentor and friend for the last 17 years and will definitely be a hard act to follow.
Well, it's a joy. So so I want to make that announcement, excited to make that announcement. Now we're going to dive in. So we're going to do a little bit of introduction, overview, and then we'll get into some tips for year-end giving. I would like to start out just by reminding everybody that this is the busiest time of year for giving. And, this chart really hasn't changed much over the years. Right now, it's showing that 30% of gifts occur in the fourth quarter and 20% happen in December. So this is a big time for us. This is an important time for us. A lot of times, this is the make or break season for giving. So we want to be on our game. We want to be well informed to solicit those gifts during this time of year. So a couple opening comments regarding kind of the state of where we are from a giving perspective. First of all, I want to mention cash. And I'll get to this in a little bit about why I'm talking so much about cash. But when I talk about cash, I mean actual currency, hard currency, cash, talking about writing checks and credit cards. And what we're seeing is a decrease in the amount of cash giving that is happening. Yahoo News reported that 45% of Americans did not write a single check in 2022. I think I'm one of those. So that may be you too. Not many of us write checks anymore. And that credit cards are not conducive for large gifts. The median on a credit card limit's $5,500. We just talked that 20% of giving happens in December. And with the $5,500 median credit card limit, also, what do folks do in December? Hey, we buy gifts for people, and we normally charge that on our credit card. So our credit cards are already being utilized for other things. So you're not going to see a lot of large gifts via credit card, and people are not using checks much anymore. So why does this matter? Well, let me go to the next slide and tell you that talk about older generations a little bit. And older generations, I mean, that's the boomers, the silent generation, those folks have really, really benefited a lot due to run-ups in stock markets, housing markets. They've accumulated tremendous wealth. And that wealth is not typically held in cash. It's usually in real estate, stocks, retirement accounts, business interests, those sorts of things. And if you look at how that is held, the 52 to 70-year-olds, this is from CNBC, is showing in 2019, on average, net worth 1.2 million. If you look at the other age ranges, you can see 509,000, 36 to 51. Why do I bring that up? Well, if you look at the demographics in our churches and in our parishes, both Presbyterian and Episcopalian, you're seeing an aging demographic in our churches, right? And so as we think about that aging demographic or membership in our churches, we're seeing they have accumulated a lot of wealth, but that wealth is not typically held in cash. And when you think just totally in terms of a population, what we're seeing is this intergenerational wealth transfer. You're seeing that over the next 20 to 25 years, you're going to see a tremendous amount of assets transfer from older generations to other generations. over $70 trillion. So sometimes in the church, we start thinking of scarcity, like we don't have much. But the people sitting in our pews, the people that are in this aging demographic, they have accumulated wealth, and that wealth is going to transfer here in the near future. You've got 70 trillion that they're forecasting the next 20 to 25 years. You can see 22 million will go to the millennial generation, 31 to Gen X. Boomers not getting much. You know why that is, obviously, because most of that transfer is coming from boomers. And then 9 trillion to charity. And you may think, well, 9 trillion, maybe not a lot, but that's a huge dollar amount. And part of our role, both at the Presbyterian Foundation and the Episcopal Church Foundation, is to make sure our parishes, our churches participate in this wealth transfer and make sure we know how to talk about it so we can capture our fair share of this 70 trillion that's going to be transferred. And I'll tell you that 70 trillion is not held in cash. It's not held in checking accounts. It is held in other sorts of assets, whether that's IRAs, 401ks, brokerage accounts, real estate, those things. So as the church, we have to be well equipped to accommodate this wealth transfer. And interestingly enough, at least for me, there's a professor at Texas Tech, Dr. Russell James, that has done tremendous research in this area, tremendous research in both planned giving and major gifts and the types of gifts that people make. And what his studies have shown is that we at the church are very, very good at cash gifts. We pass the plate every Sunday. We have online giving forms that help to receive credit card gifts and bank debits and those sorts of things. And in fact, we're probably better than anybody else at getting cash gifts. However, what we are not good at are these major gifts. So when you look at a family's wealth, an individual's wealth, we are focusing on a very small sliver of that person's wealth or that family's wealth. On average, they're showing, cash in wealth is like 9 to 10% of a family's portfolio. So when we're asking for cash gifts, we're only asking for 9 to 10%. So when you think about scarcity, well, we're kind of bringing that on ourselves, because when we talk to a family, we're saying, hey, let's make a gift of cash to our congregation. We're only talking about a sliver for folks to give, when there's a whole abundance of another 89 to 90% that's out there. So we are challenged at asking about and talking about major gifts from accumulated wealth. We're going to touch on that today, about how to talk about that and some ways to maybe accept those types of gifts. And just so you know, the people in your pews, they're making major gifts. They absolutely are. However, they're not going to the church. So part of our role, part of the Episcopal Church Foundation's role, is to help our parishes and congregations to transition from just cash gifts to wealth-based giving. And when we do that, you'll see that there is like a 6-fold increase going from cash gifts to accumulated wealth. So we're going to talk about gifts of appreciated assets, donor advised fund, retirement assets, planned gifts, to help us move from just asking about cash gifts to talking about gifts out of wealth. So that's the opening that I wanted to share. I'm going to go through our tip number 1, which is year-end giving tip number 1, which is giving from appreciated assets. And you can see what I already mentioned, cash is 11%. We want to talk about 89% of those other assets. We want to talk about appreciated securities gifts. So when I talk about appreciated security gifts, what do I mean? These are gifts from stocks. These are gifts from fixed income, other assets. You could even talk about real estate, talk about mutual funds, exchange traded funds. All of those things can be appreciated assets or appreciated securities. And if you compare organizations that solicited cash gifts and these are Dr. James's statistics, 11% growth over a 5-year period. When we talk about organizations that actively talk about and accept appreciated securities, they grew by 66%, a 5-fold increase over a 5-year period. So if we're talking about congregations, parishes, make sure when we talk about year-end giving, don't just talk about cash. Let's talk about appreciated securities. I mean, look at the stock market over the last 10 years. It has gone up dramatically over that time. You can see that people are sitting on appreciated assets. And when you talk about appreciated assets, that is a much smarter way to give. And this is through the end of August, end of September. And yesterday the market went up dramatically. It looks like it might go up today as well. So we're really forecasting a good year for the market this year. And appreciated securities gifts have a number of benefits for both donors and for charities. Donors actually get some tax benefits as it relates to gifts of appreciated securities. If I hold a stock that I bought for $1 that's now worth $5, if I gift that in kind, which means I gift that stock to a charity, I actually avoid that $4 capital gain. I don't have to pay tax on that. I also get the full value of that gift to claim as a charitable deduction. I bought it at $1, it's worth $5. I don't pay the capital gain tax on $4, and my gift is $5. That's my charitable deduction that I get. So a much smarter way for a donor to give. And in fact, it is also smarter for churches and parishes to be able to receive these types of gifts, in that they get larger gifts because they've accepted a gift of appreciated security. So as a donor, you could even think about, if I own this stock and it's worth $5, and I'm thinking, hey, I want to make a $5 gift. I can either do it in cash or in this security. Give the security. And if you still want to hold that security, then buy the security after you make that gift at $5. You've upped your cost basis, you don't have capital gains, and you're still holding that security, and you have a huge, smarter way to give, tax smarter way to give of that appreciated security. So as we mentioned, there's significant assets invested in stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs. Again, we get away from talking about cash. Literally trillions of dollars in stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and ETFs. Move away from scarcity to abundance. There is an abundance in the US stock market, bonds, mutual funds, and ETFs. So very effective way to give, a smart way to give. Also crypto, I didn't mention crypto, and people kind of discount crypto at times. But believe it or not, there's close to $1 trillion in crypto right now. In fact, did you know crypto year to date Bitcoin up over 200%. So if you have people that have crypto, have Bitcoin, again, a much smarter way to give, a way to give in a more significant way by giving crypto and appreciated assets. So just to close out the gifting of appreciated security gifts, it takes more time than cash. You got to plan ahead for these things. Really need to initiate these gifts with your broker in mid-December. Don't wait till after Christmas. There's only really 3 working days after Christmas. So really make sure you initiate these things early. Have to be accepted in kind by the charity. So don't have your broker sell these, or your mutual fund administrator sell these and send cash to the charity. Got to transfer those in kind. And obviously your charities have to have the ability to receive security gifts. If they are challenged to do so, talk to us. We can help with those things. And last, I'll let you know that donor advised funds, which Jim is going to talk about in a minute, is an ideal vehicle to accept security gifts. Really leverage donor advised funds for these. And I've got a lot of good ways to do that. But I'm going to turn it over to Jim now for donor advised funds. And if you don't have a donor advised fund personally, man, it's a great giving vehicle. And if your organization's not accepting grants from donor advised funds, I can guarantee you have members in your pews that have a donor advised fund. So Jim, tell us about donor advised funds.
Well, thank you, Greg. And donor advised funds, where you can see right now, this is an illustration of how they work basically. They are really an opportunity of convenience and ease for the donor, where they can make large single gifts or gifts over the course of time, whatever fits for the donor's needs. And then when the donor chooses, they can advise to the sponsoring charity how to make grants, both to your church or to many, many other charities. And I wanted to take a moment here just to note, because we really didn't get into this at the beginning, that very proud to say that the Episcopal Church Foundation works in collaboration with the Presbyterian Foundation and its New Covenant Trust Company to provide donor advised funds to all people, so that at a very low threshold of typically around $2,500, you could start it, try it out, and see if it works for you. It honestly is something that is extremely beneficial, both for the donors and for your church or the charity that they are supporting. The way these basically work is you must have a charitable sponsor, like the Episcopal Church Foundation or the Presbyterian Foundation. Whoops, I don't know what happened there. Or New Covenant Trust, or of course with, let me just take remote control back from you, Greg, hold on. Okay, so those can be easily created with a charitable sponsor like one of our organizations, or Fidelity, or with Charles Schwab Charitable. There are a number of opportunities to create such a thing. And they work very well to help the donor be more philanthropic, often by enabling them to make a single large gift in a particular year, receive the tax deduction in that year, and then make grants as they wish in future years. Or if it is the desire of the donor to let that gift grow in size and be invested in the market, that's also an opportunity for those more entrepreneurial donors. It also simplifies a number of things for the donor in that they don't have to cut the check. They don't have to lick the stamp and put it on the envelope. So it just makes everything easier for the donor. And from the charity's perspective, as Greg has already said, it's very important that you have policies in place to accept them. The donor advised fund is a little different in that the donor retains the right to advise on these. It is a completed donation when they make it, and they may recommend both they can both recommend the ability to invest and also what grants to make out of that. And then those grants are facilitated by the sponsoring charity. So all of us are very happy to try and help you as a potential donor, but also to help you as a leader at your congregation to be more forward in telling people that you can receive those gifts and treating them in the right way. And there we're back. Okay, back on control. So as a quick recap, these are some figures from the National Philanthropic Trust. As you can see, the amount of charitable assets that are going into donor advised funds is quite substantial, and it has been increasing for many, many years. One note that I will just highlight on the screen is the payout rate. As you can see, it's closing in on 27%. Now, many charities and other people complain, quite honestly, that there is so much money held in donor advised funds. Truth of the matter is, yes, it is. That is true. There are many, many gifts that are being held in donor advised funds, but the amount that is distributed is quite high on an annual basis, all depending on what the donor's goals will be. That is what determines how quickly the payout will occur. But this percentage is much, much higher then the percentage being paid out from any number of private foundations, which typically only pay out about 5%. What has motivated the growth recently in donor-advised funds, especially for the average American, is the change in itemized deductions, where since 2021, fewer and fewer people are actually itemizing their deduction. And that is because they need to go to a quite high amount to go above the standard deduction. For those who are considering making a donor-advised fund, this fits very well into this context. And the reason is that a donor can make a very large gift in a particular year that may benefit her for her taxes by bunching a number of charitable gifts that she intends to make both in this year and in the future. Again, so that she would receive the large tax deduction in the year that she would make that gift. I say she over and over again because if you haven't noticed or you don't know this, women are much more philanthropic than most men. If you don't believe me, please read the New Testament and Acts of the Apostles as a proof text for that. Nonetheless, this empowers donors in a new way where they can actually give to charities over the course of many years, making grants through their donor advised fund at a schedule that fits for them, both benefiting them from a charitable deduction perspective, as well as the ability to make grants for many years to come. Now, there are a couple of notes just to remember when it comes to donor advised grants. Since it is a completed gift, when you make the original and subsequent tax deductible gifts to your donor advised fund, the grant, any grant from a donor advised fund cannot be used to satisfy obligatory pledges. Obligatory pledges. So it is recommended, and we'll be sharing with you a best practice pledge card to use, which mentions that someone would intend to make certain grants out of their donor advised fund and not obligating themselves to an actual pledge. But this is a way to enable more regular giving and, for that matter, automated electronic granting to your parish or to other charities. And so this, as I say, can work very well for any number of charities. And our belief is that this will simply continue to grow. There was a question that was posed in registration about covering the gift of business interests. And I just wanted to note that we recently did a webinar back in September with myself, Greg Rousos, and our mutual partner, Charitable Solutions, about how one could actually make a gift of business interests, which are highly complex and can sometimes cause individual churches problems. Well, those gifts can actually be made either through the Presbyterian Foundation and New Covenant Trust or the Episcopal Church Foundation through our partnership with Charitable Solutions. If you'd like, you can certainly access a recording of that webinar through either of us, but we are very happy to make sure that you know that this is an additional opportunity to once again enhance generosity among the members of your congregation. Okay, I am now very happy to turn the floor back over to my colleague and friend, Greg Russo, to give you the third tip. But before I do that, thank you for all the questions that you are typing into the Q&A. Please do type your question into Q&A throughout our presentation. And toward the end, we'll be trying to answer as many of them as possible. Greg, can you please proceed?
Absolutely. Thank you, Jim. So I think this is really exciting. And I think it is exciting to talk about these things. And again, moving from just cash gifts to, gifts of wealth. And certainly donor advised funds are a place where donors have accumulated some of their wealth for charitable purposes. Another thing that we should talk about is IRAs, individual retirement accounts, and gifts out of IRAs. There's been a lot of legislation recently on IRAs, both with the Secure Act and the Secure Act 2.0. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. But the first thing I want to mention is if you look at individual retirement accounts, $12.5 trillion are in individual retirement accounts, another 9.8 million in defined contribution plans. But I really want to focus on individual retirement accounts. There is a lot of accumulated wealth in individual retirement accounts, and we need to be talking about our members, our donors. We need to be talking about gifts from IRAs with them because they can be substantial gifts. So one thing to just remind everybody about, I'm really not talking about Roth IRAs right now. I'm talking about traditional individual retirement accounts. Distributions are ordinary income, and they are reflected on your tax return as ordinary income, and they're included in adjusted gross income in your AGI. Another thing to note is the IRS, rightfully so, is going to tax this money because what goes into a traditional IRA is pre-tax dollars. So even if I have a traditional IRA, I get money out, it's ordinary income. When I die and whoever benefits from that traditional IRA, they're going to get taxed on it because those dollars have never been taxed. So always be taxed. Now, some of the recent legislation has changed the required minimum distribution age. It's now 73. So it keeps going up. That doesn't mean you can't take money out before 73, but the IRS, the government, is requiring when you turn 73, you have to start taking money out of your IRA, which means you are going to have ordinary income on your tax return when you turn 73 from your IRA. And that ordinary income that impacts your AGI, your adjusted gross income, can actually affect Medicare costs, affect other taxes, can phase out other deductions. So an increase in your AGI can impact other things dramatically. So if we talk about required minimum distributions and we talk about IRAs, there's something called a qualified charitable distribution. And this applies again to traditional IRAs, doesn't make sense for Roth IRAs. But a qualified charitable distribution is a distribution out of your IRA that goes directly to charity. It can't go to a donor advised fund, it has to go directly to charity. But it does a couple of things for you. One, it satisfies your required minimum distribution. So if you're 73 or older and you have to take money out and you really think, I'm going to make a gift to my church of X amount, and I also have to take so much out of my IRA, well, just, you ought to say, well, stop, think about this for a minute. Don't make that out of your checking account. That is not a good thing to do. Instead, take that required minimum distribution and do what's called a qualified charitable distribution and give it directly from your IRA to that charity. That is huge. It keeps it out of your ordinary income, keeps it out of your AGI, and it positively, affects Medicare premiums, other phase outs, huge benefits. So age 70, and actually QCDs are available to you actually at a younger age than even RMDs. So while I'm not 70 and a half yet, I'm not allowed to do a QCD yet, but I can when I hit age 70 and a half. Also, there is a new option, just came out, signed into legislation the end of last year, which is really interesting. The Secure Act 2.0 allows a person to take a qualified charitable distribution and fund a charitable gift annuity or a charitable trust, a charitable remainder trust, either one. You can do it once in your lifetime, max of $50,000. You can fund these things. And the advantage to this is it actually takes what would be all ordinary income in 1 year, stretches it out over a number of years, right, into the future, and also gives you a charitable deduction for what the calculation says the residual interest is in the charitable gift annuity or the charitable trust that's going to the charity. So there's a huge benefit, a huge tax benefit to do this. So age 70 and a half to do this for a qualified charitable distribution. Some other facts about qualified charitable distributions. I already talked about excluding it from gross income. I already talked about how it can help with taxes and phasing out deductions. You can actually do it to the extent that it's greater than a required minimum distribution. There is a max of $100,000 per person per year on a qualified charitable distribution. Cannot fund a donor advised fund, has to go directly to charity. And for many, many people that are 70 or older, this is absolutely the best way to give as opposed to giving cash. So again, instead of making a cash gift, much more advantageous to give from a qualified charitable distribution. Why does this matter in the sense of our congregations and our parishes? The boomers are aging, right? People are getting older in our midst. Boomers are now 60 to 78 years old. So a lot of folks are now eligible to take qualified charitable distributions. It is absolutely the best way for them to give. Another point I want to make too, remember how I said earlier how this is pre-tax dollars, and whether I give it now or I die and give it to somebody else, it's ultimately going to be taxed. Well, as you think about estate plans and you think about your charitable intent after you die, the best way to fulfill that charitable intent is traditional IRAs. That avoids the tax on them, and it gives your beneficiaries of your estate monies that have already been taxed. So think about that, consider that. And then the last thing, just to close out, how to make a QCD. If you're a leader in your parish, leader in your congregation, make sure they know that your parish, your congregation can accept this type of gift. To let them know a much smarter way to give. Don't just think about your checking account, think about your IRA assets. Huge benefits to doing this. However, this takes time to do, just like appreciated securities. Plan ahead. Think about this after Thanksgiving, early December. Some of your brokers, some of your mutual fund administrators may not be familiar with this. You can talk to Episcopal Church Foundation, Presbyterian Foundation. We are happy to help with these types of gifts if you need to, but a very effective way to give is from your IRA in the form of a qualified charitable distribution. So I'm done with this. I'm going to turn it over to our last tip, or our second to last tip, and turn it back over to Jim. And my friend Jim's going to take it from here. So thanks, Jim. And we're talking about a couple more things.
Okay, well, thank you again so much. And as you have just heard, we are transitioning from the planned giving adjacent area into actually talking a bit more about planned giving. And this is truly a good opportunity at this time of year, as people are considering their generosity and making these last gifts, to also give them an opportunity to reflect on planned giving, those gifts which are made out of one's estate or out of assets that they're holding for retirement. And I'll get more deeply into this in a moment, but what I wanted to remind all of the leaders out there about when it comes to planned giving, the Episcopal Church Foundation and the wonderful staff at the Presbyterian Foundation have a number of resources available to you at this time, from webinars to great online resources that are downloadable and templated for leaders to use to enhance your ongoing planned giving efforts, including the opportunities that ECF has with ECF 360, our comprehensive online tools, which are based upon the Presbyterians for Stewardship Navigator. And there are many other resources that are available to you as leaders. But a reminder, many of you, if you've heard my webinars before or heard those of Carl Madison at the Presbyterian Foundation, when it comes to planned giving, these are gifts where it is focused on the future of your congregation or your particular religious entity. These are gifts of utter passion for that future and desiring to continue the support into the future, a future where people will no longer be physically present. And the thing that I always say when I'm talking about or promoting planned giving to leaders and for donors is that when someone makes a planned gift, they raise the church, they raise the institution to the level of family in their estate plans. This is the key factor to remember when it comes to planned giving. And you leaders out there, use the tools that become available to you, and always remember to be sensitive, gentle, and patient. These are ultimate issues and ultimate decisions that people are making. And it's crucial for you to be building trust and confidence among the members of your congregation over time. And of course, both the Episcopal Church Foundation and the Presbyterian Foundation can assist in those trust-building, confidence-building efforts. When it comes to planned giving, obviously, more and more seniors, and as I lurch toward being a senior myself, this is always on people's minds of considering, well, what are the most important things in my life that I wish to continue? Obviously, my family, my children, but also those institutions that made a difference in my life. And this is what people are often thinking about late in the year. And so this is truly an opportunity to incite people to reflect on how they could make a planned gift themselves. And there are many, many different types of gifts, which we'll touch on in a moment. But what has been true is that clearly from IRS and other data that when people make those charitable bequests, they are quite substantially larger than their individual lifetime giving and can truly be mission-changing, life-changing for your congregation. And don't forget, as you encourage people to make a planned gift and really commit to the future of your congregation, you will also, as a wonderful byproduct, enable people to actually be more generous about their annual giving after they have made that commitment. Please, please do not presume that your donors are already aware of how to do this. You, as leaders of your congregation, need to educate them. It can be as simple as ensuring you have lines on your pledge card that talk about planned giving and getting more information. Putting information out there for people to use, as well as many of the different online resources of the Presbyterian and Episcopal Church Foundations. And don't forget, when you do acknowledge, and my goodness, please, please, please acknowledge any year-end gift that you do receive. Please encourage those people at that same time to consider making a planned gift. And if you can't incorporate a lot of detail in that gift acknowledgement for year-end giving, reference a website, reference some other way for them to get in contact with the leadership of the parish. We don't have time today to get into the depths that I love to get into when it comes to having a legacy society, a society to say thank you to those people who have raised the parish and congregation to the level of family. However, that is a way to draw in those who have made this commitment. And for those of you out there that might be afraid you're too small or too poor of a church to have a planned giving effort, I'm here to tell you, it is not the wealthy who make the significant planned gifts to your congregation. It is the consistent givers, regardless of the amount that they give. Many of those people may need to hold those assets until late in life and can only give them after they have passed. So be confident you can actually do this. You can also do it both for someone's legacy, the memory that they wish to leave behind, raising you to the level of family, but also for current context, which I'll get to in a moment. As I mentioned, there are many different types of planned gifts. The vast majority are given through a will or trust or an account designation. As Greg has already noted about the remainder value of one of those many different tax-deferred accounts, including IRAs. There are also ways to give where there's a mutual benefit called life income gifts, and I'll talk about those in a half second. But please, as leaders of your congregation, raise awareness of all the different types of gifts, because you don't know what someone's particular context or situation is. But by sharing all of the many options when it comes to planned giving, you can actually encourage these gifts to be made to your congregation. Building trust is key, as I already mentioned, and as Greg and others on the call know, one of the best ways to do that trust building, that enhancement of trust in leadership at your congregation, is by having in place endowment and gift acceptance policies, both to guide leaders as well as to guide donors. And as you'll see at the end, all of us at both organizations are happy to assist you in that. In a real quick note, I mentioned life income gifts, the LIGs. These are gifts which individual donors can greatly benefit in the present. These are gifts where someone will make an irrevocable gift. After they make that gift, they receive a charitable deduction in the year that they make it. And either the donor or whomever the donor designates receives income, typically for the rest of their life, leaving the remainder of that gift to charity. I've summarized on the screen the three basic types of pooled income fund, charitable gift annuity, charitable remainder trust. And the one final note to say about this is you can reach out to us at the Episcopal Church Foundation, at the Presbyterian Foundation, and we can work with your donors at your congregation individually to figure out what is the best gift for them, because it won't be the same for everyone. As Greg's already mentioned, and I'm excited by this because we're already receiving several of those QCD, qualified charitable distributions, to fund that once in a lifetime CGA. Many people are doing it. If you'd like more information, we are more than happy to share information about it. ECF has a brief webinar about it on our website, but please reach out to us and we are more than happy to assist. So I wanted to wrap up. We originally had 4. I made it 5 tips in our time here together today, because I wanted to remind everyone about a wonderful opportunity that is imminent. It is truly imminent. And that is Giving Tuesday, on the Tuesday following Thanksgiving. We all know about Black Friday and getting to the stores. We know about Cyber Monday. But Giving Tuesday is a wonderful opportunity and an easy one. You are right at the time when you could easily, as leaders of your congregation, send out a brief email appeal reminding people about Giving Tuesday. You could even announce it at church in the previous Sundays, this Sunday and next. But a few quick guidelines. Make sure that you do have a clickable way that you could send with the email appeal that you send out to your members, so that they can have an immediate response. You should set a goal and or a purpose for the appeal that you're giving on Giving Tuesday, whether that be for a particular ministry at the congregation. Hopefully not to close debt, but that is something many people have done on Giving Tuesday. But there are many different opportunities for people. I would also encourage you to put this in the context of an Advent gift, just in case people do miss the opportunity on Tuesday the 28th. They can certainly continue to give throughout Advent and up until the very end of the year. Don't forget, this can be an opportunity for someone to give a gift in memory, a memorial gift for a loved one or for a particular ministry at the congregation. It is what moves people's hearts that motivates them to make many end-of-year gifts and to make that perhaps more substantial gift. giving a gift of securities, or other gifts from cash that they may have received in an end of year bonus. So there is still time. You can act on this right away. Keep it simple, but it's a great opportunity. Oops, went wrong way. It's a great opportunity for you at the congregation as a leader. So I am now going to stop talking, invite my pal Angela to come on, and please lead us, Greg and I, through the questions that have accumulated. And if we don't answer your question, happy to answer it later. But Angela, please take it away.
Certainly, and I will bundle these by topic just to keep us on the same topic at a time. So we'll start with donor advised funds. I will just add a personal note. I have a donor advised fund and I love it. It's definitely my favorite and easiest giving vehicle to use. But so we have one question, which is curious as to the approximate costs for a donor to establish a donor advised fund, both initially and ongoing.
Greg, I'm not sure if you want to add to it. For ECF, you can start a donor advised fund for $2,500. For the actual costs of the fund, I am more than happy to email out a list of the fund types that people can select, which will actually determine what your actual costs are. Greg, do you want to say a note about that?
Sure, Jim. Yes. And so donor advised funds, again, very, very low minimum to get started, $2,500 as mentioned. I as well have a donor advised fund. It is the easiest way to make charitable gifts. There is no startup cost. There's no fixed costs. It's a percentage of the assets in your donor advised fund. And it's a very small percentage of that. So great giving vehicle, easy to set up. You can open those electronically, fund them electronically. I think minimum grant size is $100 to grant to a charity. So very small, very easy to use. And you can set up recurring grants, as Jim mentioned earlier.
And you can make those grants to any type of institution, your church, or to others. So a great opportunity for me, who's a little lazy every now and again. I like that I can just go online because I also have a donor advised fund, and I can do all of that giving from the comfort of my living room chair. Angela, what's the next question you'd like to pose to us?
Certainly. The next question is, I don't understand what you mean about the statement that donor advised fund grants cannot satisfy obligatory pledges. Do you mean that if a donor makes a pledge, they cannot satisfy that pledge with a donor advised fund grant?
So, Greg, would you like to answer this? You want me to? I'm happy to.
Yeah, go ahead, Jim, and I'll chime in.
So when it comes to the legal issue here, the answer is yes. If it is an obligatory pledge towards a capital campaign or something like that, absolutely, you cannot satisfy that obligation by making a donor advised fund grant. That's not allowed. The nuance here is that you just cannot have it be obligatory. Many church pledges are not actually obligatory, and that is assumed in most cases. So there have been a few times when we've administered our own donor advised fund grant, and if we receive something that comes through because us at ECF or the Presbyterian Foundation has to approve that grant as it flows through. If a donor by mistake puts in the phrase that it is a payment of a pledge or payoff of a pledge, we contact the donor and remind them that it cannot be for an obligatory pledge, and we just affirm that the pledge itself is not truly obligatory. And then by the guidelines that have been set by the IRS, we would remove that phrase of pledge from any correspondence that would go out to the church or to any other institution. But of course, if it is truly an obligatory pledge, that is a legal obligation for the individual, you cannot use a donor advised fund grant to pay that off. Greg, do you want to add to that?
Jim, I think you covered it well. And I think, also as churches go through their stewardship season, there are ways, as you said, Jim, in terms of commitment cards or whatever you want to call it, where a church member can indicate that they are going to commit so much to the congregation from a donor advised fund to help with that as well. So there are some nuances and ways to work through that. But you're right, legally obligatory pledges, especially a grant request that comes in with that language, is difficult to fulfill.
Angelo, what's the next question?
Well, and I would just add on that, the super in the weeds. I usually just change my pledge card to say I intend to make a gift of X. That way the church has that information for budgeting, but at the same time, we don't get into that risk of the obligatory pledge. So, and I think both organizations are happy to engage a conversation with you if you have any questions or receiving any questions from a donor on how to handle that. So those were the primary questions on donor advised funds. We do have some other questions. One is, I would like to know if there is printed information or information online that we can point our givers to in order for them to receive this information.
We will be sharing for this particular webinar, we'll be sharing the slides, sharing the recordings, and sharing some other tools to help, both at ECF and the Presbyterian Foundation. We have a number of online tools. So if that doesn't answer that person's question specifically, please just type in another question and we'll be back with you as soon as we can. Greg, anything to add?
The only thing I'd add, Jim, is we will be posting as well a summary of this webinar, a written article blog on this probably within the next couple of weeks with a link to the recording as well. So you could look for that on our website, New Covenant Trust Company's website, and you should find that blog.
Thank you.
The next question is the age 70 and a half for gifts from IRAs determined at the time of the gift or other designation as of 12/31 of the year, for example?
Boy, that's a good question. Jim, do you know the answer to that?
I believe you literally need to be 70 and a half. What that means is you are actually actuarially 71. So once you pass your 6-month birthday, you fall into the category of being 71 and a half. But as always, we encourage you to check with your own financial advisor just to reaffirm that. It should be very easy to contact your IRA holder to get more information. And if I may just jump in there for a second, I wanted to remind everyone, as Greg said before, the qualified charitable distribution is only for making a distribution from a traditional IRA. There are other types of tax-deferred accounts with 401ks, 403bs, etc. Those do not have the option for making a qualified charitable distribution. If you make a distribution out of either of those types of tax-deferred accounts, you will be taxed on the distribution that you have made to charity, but in exchange, you'll literally also then get a charitable deduction because, excuse me, it is only a traditional IRA where you can make that qualified charitable distribution. While I'm on the QCD option, I know we have to wrap up. There is a question that wasn't in Q&A from Frank Hunter, and that he said there was confusion between a slide that said 50,000 limit and the $100,000 limit. A quick clarifying statement on that. So you can make a qualified charitable distribution as a direct gift to any charity after you're 70 and a half up to $100,000 and have that count toward your required minimum distribution if you have one, typically after you're over 73. The $50,000 limit is very specific and refers to using a qualified charitable distribution to fund a charitable gift annuity, which we're happy to get into greater detail about, but it is only in that case.
Yeah, Jim, I would just add that $50,000 is a lifetime limit. So you can only do that once. The 100,000 per person is you can do that every single year. Yes.
Thank you very much. Angela, shall we take one more question and then wrap up?
Sure. And actually, it goes along these same lines. The question is, how do I get more information on gift annuities from a QCD?
Yes, and it's any sort of life and pooled income funds do not qualify. So, but charitable gift annuities, charitable remainder trusts. Jim, I imagine that would be contacting you at the Episcopal Church Foundation.
It absolutely would, but our threshold for a charitable remainder trust is $250,000. So we only are promoting people use the CGA, which is typical across the country at this point.
Yeah, and for us, we have, I think we're going to get to this, Angela, our ministry relations officers across the country would be the best point of contact for the Presbyterian Foundation. So do we want to go to how you get in touch with us now? Or a summary? I can touch on the summary real quick, Jim, if you'd like.
Yeah, please proceed.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about scarcity, giving out of scarcity versus abundance. Don't let this stuff challenge you. Don't let this complex material challenge you. We have a lot of great resources, both at the Episcopal Church Foundation, the Presbyterian Foundation, to assist. There are really smart ways to give, and we want to help donors take advantage of those smart ways to give. The right gift vehicle, the right asset really, really matters to maximize the gift to your church. We're here to help. Contact us. I think the next two slides show you how to contact us. The first one is our ministry relations officers at the Presbyterian Foundation. They are excellent. We are blessed to have a talented group of people. Contact information is here on the slide. We'll distribute this shortly. You can also find it on the Presbyterian Foundation's website. Any questions? They know all the stuff that we've talked about today. Feel free to reach out to them. And I think our next slide, Jim, is the Episcopal Church Foundation.
It was until I pressed too many buttons. So absolutely contact us. We are more than happy to assist and support you. Our contact information will be included when we send out the recording and the slides. And as I mentioned, for the Episcopal Church Foundation, all of the webinars we referred to are on our ecfvp.org site. Everyone is welcome to visit that, though I know the Presbyterian Foundation has its own. So thank you again for being with us today. Thank you, Angela. Thank you, Greg, for all of your support throughout the past many years. And all of us at the Episcopal Church Foundation treasured our relationship with Greg Rousos, who has been instrumental in building up several programs here, including our Donor Advised Fund and our ECF 360 Stewardship comprehensive website. And Angela, I've known you for many years and I'm just so incredibly excited to continue working with you in all of these areas. So thank you all for coming. I will allow Greg and Angela also to say their goodbyes. But God bless everybody. Thank you for coming today. Greg?
Thank you, Jim. And I tell you, your friendship means the world to me. I treasure it, Jim. Thank you for all that we've done together. And I look forward just to seeing, what you do in the future. Just always amazed at the good work and the way that you help your parishes and the Episcopal Church. So I treasure our relationship. And Angela, look forward to this next month and a half with you. And again, excited to see the future and just God bless everybody. We are passionate about helping congregations and ministries flourish. So however we can help, please reach out to us. That's what we are excited about doing. So thank you. Thank you for your time. Angela?
Just echo everything you said, Greg. Just so excited to be able to work with you, to move forward with you, to really help you build vital and healthy congregations and let us know how we can help.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.